Good evening, everyone. My name is Councillor Dean Gamble, and I am the chair of this committee. And my fellow councillor, Councillor Ian Ridley, is the vice chair. In accordance with the regulations made under Section 78 of the Coronavirus Act 2020, this remote meeting is being live streamed and recorded. The audio-visual recording will be made available on the council's website and YouTube channel shortly after this meeting. All meeting participants are reminded to speak slowly and clearly in the direction of their devices' microphones at all times. A reminder that mobile phones and other electronic devices should be turned off or put on silent mode, and those participating in the meeting should refrain from taking telephone calls. For the purpose of recording of attendance, I can confirm the following councillors are present on and participating in this remote meeting. Councillors Naveed Alam, Lee Bentley, Bill Bolter, John Boyce, Linda Broadley, Latif Dar, myself, Dean Gamble, Kitty Joshi, Jeffrey Kaufman, Lily Kaufman, Kevin Lloydell, David Lloydell, and the Vice Chair, Ian Ridley. We also have the following officers in attendance. Samuel Ball, trainee solicitor, who is acting as a Democratic Service Officer. Philippa Fisher, the Head of Consumer Service and Transformation. David Gill, the Head of Law and Democracy and Monitoring Officer. Stephen Hines, the Deputy Chief Executive. And Stephen Tuckett, the Democrat and Electoral Services Manager. For the purpose of these regulations, I can confirm that before this remote meeting went live, all participants confirmed they can see and or hear all other participants. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with the Council's adopted remote meeting procedure rules, a summary of which is attached to tonight's agenda for reference. May I also politely remind all participants that they must not act in a disorderly or disruptive manner or otherwise interfere with the committee's proper conduct of its business. Thank you. Right, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies this evening from councillors Robert and Linda Eaton, and no formal apologies received, but can't see Councillor Kevin Lloydell amongst us currently, so may join at some point.
Thank you.
Chair, I've got Councillor Broadley's hand raised.
Sorry, Chair. You keep breaking up. I can only hear sort of every other word.
Chair, your connection is showing as stable as well as mine. It may be a local issue with you, Councillor Broadley. Do you want to see how if it improves? And
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Ball, can I just interrupt? I'm having the same problem as well. It's very difficult to hear the chair.
I'm at full capacity on my Wi-Fi.
I've got to say, Chair, that when you're actually speaking directly into it, it seemed to be okay. It's when you're sort of looking slightly away that your voice disappears.
Okay, I shall keep looking at you, Councillor Broadley. Right, agenda item 2. Apologies.
For the record, Chair, Councillor Kevin Lloydell has now joined the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Ball. Agenda item 2, appointment of substitutes.
No substitutes this evening, Chair.
Thank you. Declarations of interest.
No hands raised, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Agenda item 4, minutes of the previous meeting.
Move.
Any questions regarding them, or shall I sign the minutes?
No hands raised again, Chair.
Thank you. That's agenda item 5, action list arising from the previous meeting.
There was no action list from the last meeting, Chair, so that's a non-item.
Agenda item 6, petition and deputations.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item 7, financial outcome reports. Mr. Hines.
Thank you, Chair. Again, apologies from Connie Campbell, our interim financial services manager. He somehow managed to plan a holiday that covered both service delivery and PFD prior to his appointment. So we've obviously looked at our agenda before booking his holiday and saying yes to the job. So you will get to meet him at some point in the future. He's a great addition on the interim side, and he's a real benefit to the team. With respect to the Q1 report, as you can see, the main issue the council has been, not surprisingly, the impact of COVID, which has been incredibly significant on draining our resources. You'll see from the report that we are expecting a £500,000 overspend against a balanced budget, of which the majority of that is the outstanding COVID costs that we have not received funding for from the government. What I can say is the government have finally issued their income loss claim form for councils to fill in. It's not the easiest form to fill in, and it is full of pitfalls. So whilst we're working very hard to work out how we can get it and make sure we get the money we're owed and deserve, it's a much tougher task than you anticipate. Happy to take any questions on any of the items that are in the report, but as I said, it's primarily the COVID issue has really hit the council. Otherwise, we'd be in a very good financial state going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Councillor Bill Bolter.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, interesting report, and thank the officers for the work they've done on all this for this difficult time. 13, halfway down, it's got air monitoring equipment. £725, project now complete. Well, I don't know which air equipment that is, because the test centre that's supposed to go down by Tesco's is not even started yet. And that's the only one, as I know, that was going to be installed in the borough. And that's being paid for by 106 monies from Wix or somebody else. So what's this money for? Anybody enlighten me?
If I could come in there, Chair, there is some additional work being done on air quality monitoring in conjunction with the City Council as part of a wider County Council approach. And there is an air quality monitoring station which has been installed on the London Road at the A6. So I believe it's part of that, but I can make further inquiries on that and come back to you outside the meeting.
Any more questions, Councillor Bolter?
That'll do for now, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kevin Lloydell.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies for being late. Slight emergency cropped up. But thank you for letting me speak. Page 9, item 2.2. It's just a point of clarification halfway down 2.2 when it talks about variances. Include 35k additional costs, interim finance, etc. Finance staffing, forecast additional homelessness. I assume that would be a demand-led budget. Additional cost of ICT, HR, but just clarification on what it talks about is saying it was not included in the original budget of 85k. What was the original budget? Is that the budget that we set last year? And this is over and above that. I understand from the bit at the bottom it talks about where the costs have come from, but it's still not covered all the costs. So what is the deficit that's left, please? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. What I can say is those additional costs, there were some discrepancies in the budget when we came to look at it again, and the realignment of areas that had too much budget and areas that were not given enough budget were realigned in that process. So it was some additional equipment for IT. You'll be pleased to know that some of that is security body cameras that are initially going out for enforcement teams, because as we're aware that council staff are often subject to abuse and to help with their safety. So we've got those on there. Also, learning development strategy was miscoded, so that's been put into the right place again for staff development, but also member training as well.
Just for me, I'll come back, Chairman, just for my benefit. What you just explained to me is that you veered money from one budget head onto another one to offset some of the costs here. Does that then impact on those original budgets?
No, it does not. No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. I'm just waiting for Mr. Ball to get rid of this page so I can see if there are any more hands.
We've got Councillor Boyce next, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Boyce. You need to unmute Mr. Boyce.
I had, sorry, the screen changed and I failed to move with it. Basically, I can understand this report because, putting it simply, we are in fast moving times, and keeping up and making sure we get the right return from our COVID spend is remarkably important. I think also the fact that we are reviewing all our capital expenditure is equally right, because in the end we need to do what we need to do, not necessarily what we want to do, until it's clear how much money we have. And on that vein, page 13, towards the bottom, Crow Mill fencing. Putting it simply, I don't see why we should spend 5,000 on a wooden fence when we could probably spend a quarter of that or less by putting a living fence in, which would do perfectly well, do the same job, last for longer, and actually benefit the planet. Therefore, can I ask that particular budget be re-looked at in terms of need and suitability? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyce.
Through you, Chair. Mr. Gill, can you take that back to Margaret?
Yes, I will indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen. You need to unmute Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is just for a point of clarification on general fund position 2.1. Just at the last sentence says minor losses of income related to loss of car parking income and income from the closure of community buildings. I'm just wondering, how do we have a loss of income from car parking income? Whereabouts is that? Because we don't seem to charge for parking.
Mr. Hines.
Chair, we do charge for certain tariffs, and that's why it is a minor loss, because we didn't charge at all during the COVID crisis. So that's where the losses come from, those over 3 hour stays.
Does that answer your question, Mr.
Can I come back, Chair, just very quickly? I'd just like to know then, for information's sake, how much money is that we've lost? in terms of, we don't charge for the 3 hours, but I mean, I'm assuming that you're saying that there's a minor loss. I'm just wondering what that minor loss might be.
I'll put this into context. Our total car parking income for the budget is £22,000. If you compare us with Melton Borough Council or Charnwood, that's £600,000 that they're getting in. Our minor loss is 7,300.
You happy,
Thank
Councillor Allen?
Yep, thank you, Chair. Thank you.
If I may, Chair, it's one of the joys that not being reliant on car parking income has helped us out in this crisis, which has added greatly to a lot of other councils because they are heavily reliant on car parking income. I see you celebrating, Jeffrey. Given the, if I may say, not to be, whilst this is a good position, this is a good story, we are in a good sound position irrespective of COVID. The main issue is 21-22 because we've got a multitude of issues that we don't know what's going on. So we've got the business grants that will disappear. So we don't know how that will affect businesses moving forward, whether they'll fold or not. So that affects our income. Just as important, we've got the government, the fairer funding that we still don't know. And that was dependent on the budget, which has now been pushed back to November, which means we might not get any sort of idea of a funding settlement before the new financial year. So caveat we're going to have as many rabbits to pull out of the hat as a magic shop if we need them for next year. So we're in a good position, but it's just unknown. The future is genuinely unknown. If anybody does know, please let me know and we can win the lottery.
Thank you, Mr. Hine. Well, I think we're all in, every council's in the same boat. We just don't know what's happening in the future. Councillor Lily Kaufman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to go back to Section 106 monies. I'm assuming that the council and the financial officers are aware that Section 106 monies are going to change by the government. They're threatening that they're going to look after the Section 106 monies, and local authorities have got to start bidding for certain things, and then it's up to the government as to whether they give us the money or not. Have we sort of factored something into that? Because it may well happen the way this government's going. So I'd like to know if we factored this into any sort of reckonings and things that you're doing. Thank you.
Again, through you, Chair, we are aware of it. It shouldn't affect retrospectively. So the money we've got is the money we've got. We just got to keep one eye on the situation because, as you're aware, issues change every day. And until we see a white paper that's been put through Parliament, we've just got to plan for every option, every possible option, and which is what the planning team are doing quite well. So Mr. Thorpe is aware of that, and he is using his team to manage the risk, I think is the appropriate term there.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Are there any more councillors wishing to speak?
Okay.
No, then we'll go to the vote.
Chair, the report needs moving and seconding for the authorisation of the capital expenditure.
Yes. Recommendation A and B of the report. We take a recorded vote. You want to read that?
Sorry, Chair. Can I just clarify for the minutes? I've heard that Councillor Boyce has moved the report. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Broadley.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So if members could unmute their microphones, I'll read out alphabetical order. Just give everybody a second to do that. Oh, we lost somebody. Oh, it's just
Philippa.
Philippa, I think. Okay, that's fine. So Councillor Allen to begin with.
Yes.
Councillor Bentley.
Or
Councillor Volter.
or
Councillor Boyce.
or
Councillor Broadley.
4.
Councillor Dar.
4.
Councillor Gamble.
4.
Councillor Joshi.
4.
Councillor Jeffrey Kaufman.
4.
Councillor Lily Kaufman.
4.
Councillor David Lloydall.
4.
Councillor Kevin Lloydall.
4.
And Councillor Ridley.
4.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. We then move on to agenda item 8, pages 15 to 28, Treasury Management Annual Report. I think this is you again, Mr. Hines.
Thank you, Chair. It's a very simple report. We had a treasury management strategy that comes to an end this year. This is a statutory regulation that we do provide the report to say that we're actually meeting the treasury management strategy and what our performance is. it's clear that we've met the strategy. We're well within our borrowing and investment limits. What it does mean is that when we come to rewrite this strategy going forward for 21-22, it's a very different world when it comes to investments, and it's going to be an interesting report that we bring to you early next year. But as it stands, we are well within all our parameters. Our forecasts are within what we expect and what was agreed when we set the strategy in 2018. And I'm happy to take any questions. However, if you have any very technical questions, I'll have to take those away and get back to you outside of the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Are there any questions? Doesn't seem to be. Yes, Councillor Bolter.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Annex 3.1, the counterparties who we lend money to, are we going to review that list in view of recent activities to make sure that we're still happy with those as counterparties to work with?
Through you, Chair, yes, we will. Everything will be reviewed from top to toe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bolter. Are there any more questions? Doesn't seem to be. Therefore, we shall note the reports. Thank you. Agenda item 9, standards and ethical indicators, Q1, pages 29 to 38. Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Chair. This report, or the purpose of the report, is set out in 1.1, which is in order to ensure good governance and maintenance of standards. We report to members either formally because we're required to in legislation or as a matter of good practice, the measurement on the ethical indicators. You'll see that in Q1, in respect of complaints against members, there were no complaints received against members, and therefore there was no action required on my part as monitoring officer. Below that, you'll see that there are various categories of reporting. As you would appreciate, again, you will hear that the COVID word has affected a great deal of what we've done, and in particular, in respect of the FOI requests, they were substantially down in terms of numbers, and also the Information Commissioner extended the time for compliance. So you'll see that last Q1 of last year, we had 214 FOI requests, whereas this year we had 88. So it shows that there was a shifted emphasis. I don't propose to go through the whole of the figures, Chairman. If any members have got any questions on any particular area, then I'm happy to take those.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Councillor Boyce.
Thank you, Chair. As usual, perfectly comprehensive report, but on page 38, 8 of 8, number of complaints at the top, 31, disposed of 13, number of complaints still open, 4, and no further action, 3. I make it there's 11 missing.
That's in respect to antisocial behaviour, so therefore there may be complaints that are still ongoing or there's no further action, and also the disposals may well be different. So I can rely on what I'm told by the ASB officer, but those are the information that's given. So it doesn't always follow, of course, that we will actually issue a disposal in every complaint of ASB, because not every complaint of ASB, when it's investigated, turns out to be ASB. So although we have the complaints registered, we have disposals, and then we have no further actions, and also some that may well still being dealt with in other ways.
If I may come back, Chair, thank you for that extremely long-winded answer. The figures should still add up, so if they don't currently add up, you need to put another row in to add them up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyce. Are there any more questions? No, there doesn't seem to be. Therefore, we shall note that report. Agenda item 10, local government and social care, pages 39 to 48, annual review letter. Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Chair. This is the annual review letter from the LGO that comes through every year. There is nothing in the report that members haven't already seen, in the sense that of the matters where there was a finding of fault, those matters have already been presented to council on separate occasions. The only thing that I wouldn't draw your attention to, members, is that if you look at the number of complaints upheld, that is in respect only of decisions where the Ombudsman did a full investigation. So he investigated 5 cases. He gave 3 decisions, which gave a number of complaints upheld at 60%. If you actually look at the spreadsheet that is attached to the end, there are actually 9 complaints made to the Ombudsman, and the Ombudsman chose not to investigate 4 of them, either because they were premature, or because he had no remit to do so, or because he felt that there was no prospect of him finding any fault on behalf of the council. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Councillor Bolter.
Move report, Chair. Note the report.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. That report is noted. Agenda item 11, review of corporate compliments, comments and complaints policy. Philippa Fisher, it's over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just for the record, I'm having problems with my internet connection here, so I will do my best. But Mr. Ball, if you can let me know if I drop out, and then I will try and reconnect some way. So the proposed policy ensures that we have a clear process for our customers to follow when making a complaint. And as a council, it also helps us to put things right when they go wrong, but most importantly, ensure that the council learns from the mistakes that they've made. As a part of the journey towards achieving the Customer Excellence Award, we have reviewed operational processes and policies to improve our service and support to customers. Part of this review has focused on our compliments, comments and complaint policy. It has also coincided with the updated Housing Ombudsman scheme, which contains their complaint process, which was launched early September 2020. The proposed compliments, comments and complaints policy also accommodates the changes to reflect this new legislation. The benefits of this new policy is enhanced clarity for our customers about how the council communicates and responds specifically around complaints. And the key areas of improvement are as follows. We want to make it easier for our customers to complain by one initial point of contact. At this moment in time, there are various ways that customers can actually complain to us. The vast majority of complaints are going to be channeled through our customer service team as one point of entry where they can be triaged. Quite a number of complaints come in initially are service queries or other general queries that can be resolved and are not actually genuine complaints. Currently, customers have to put complaints in writing themselves. We're actually going to now offer to do take complaints over the telephone, via our social media and in writing as well, giving them more opportunities and different ways to actually contact us and put their complaints in. This policy also puts forward an improved response time for the first stage 1, instead of 15 days to respond back to the customer in 10 days. And this also ties in with the new Housing Ombudsman scheme and their complaint process. We've also introduced, we're proposing to introduce an early resolution principle. This is partly operational, but typically we would write back to the customer when a complaint first came in. What we will start doing is actually phoning a customer to try and resolve it, rather than it going into a written format of a complaint. Again, the final point is improved monitoring and reporting. This is operational, but this process gives us a far more robust way of dealing with complaints and monitoring them and tracking them within the council. Chair, I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Philippa. Councillor Boyce.
Thank you, Chair. I'm perfectly happy with this. There's one slight omission, which on page 64, talking about vexatious complaints, which I suspect should also include vexatious communications in general. You've sending multiple emails, foul language, and so on. You should actually cover the normal mail as well. We do have people who write in all the time, and frankly, some of those are actually vexatious and downright unpleasant. But you could argue that it's mail is not covered, therefore is not vexatious. So it may well be something you need to put in.
Philippa, would you like to respond, or are you frozen?
Philippa, can you see and hear?
Chair, I think Philippa's frozen, so we can take that on board, amend accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Are there any other questions? If so, I'll direct them to Mr.
Chair,
Hines.
I'm really.
No, I think we've lost you again, Philippa. Are there any other questions? There doesn't seem to be. Then we shall go to a vote. Do I have a seconder to Councillor Boyce?
I'll second that.
Sorry.
Second.
So, because I've made a
Mr.
suggestion, I'm happy that the outcome of that suggestion is dealt with under delegation. Do we need to amend the motion so that that reflects that?
Mr. Hines or Mr. Gill?
My apologies because I'm frozen as well, but did the report go through for noting or approving?
It's a matter for information and decision.
It's a matter of information.
It's approving.
In that case, I would suggest that we have a motion that is moved with the suggested amendment from Councillor Boyce, and if that is seconded, then I'm happy to go ahead on that basis.
I will second it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Broadley. Therefore, we have the recommendations. We shall now go to the vote.
Okay, if all members could unmute themselves again. Councillor Allen?
For.
Councillor Bentley?
For.
Councillor Bolter?
For.
Councillor Boyce?
For.
Councillor Broadley?
For.
Councillor Dar?
For.
Councillor Gamble?
For.
Councillor Joshi?
For.
Councillor Jeffrey Kaufman?
For.
Councillor Lily Kaufman?
For.
Councillor David Lloydall?
For.
Councillor Kevin Lloydall?
For.
Councillor Ridley?
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Well, that concludes the agenda for this night's meeting. So I shall close the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.